All right, my friend and uh, my dear friend now and a returning guest, Rita Gigante is back. Hello, Rita. What's happening?
How are you, hon? All good on this end. Christmas
Uh,
season is upon us and it's flying. I really feel like one day just rolls into the next.
yeah, I totally agree. It's like it's unbelievable. Like it's 2023 in next week or in 2 weeks, and it's like holy
Yeah,
shit!
yeah.
It just doesn't
It
stop.
it 2022 blew away. It
Yeah.
just like was like here and done. Now I remember my mother telling me when I was younger, wait till you get into your 50s and you watch how the time flies and all of that. And now
Oh,
she's right. Now, unless
yeah.
you slow it down yourself, forget it. It's
Yeah, you're
gone.
right. You're right. You're right. You got to take some time out for yourself. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
for people who don't know, if they haven't seen my previous interview with you, or if they haven't seen you on your YouTube channel or on other podcasts and YouTube channels, you are the daughter of Vincent Gigante, or better known as Vincent the Chin Gigante, who was the uh, capo di tutto capo. He was the boss of all bosses in the Cosa Nostra back in
Mhm.
the 70s, 80s into the 90s. Very famous toward the end of his life. And you wrote a book
I did.
about being his daughter, which I read. Fascinating book. It really is fascinating.
Thank you.
It's called The Godfather's Daughter. And the reason why it's not your normal mafia true crime. It is the story about you and how you realized your family was different, how it was growing up with such a powerful father, and how it shaped you into becoming a medium healer psychic.
Yeah. It was the perfect storm for me to learn what I needed to learn to evolve to the point where I could then understand my gifts and utilize them to help others. It's certainly, you know, it, people looking at it from the outside in, they think this life is glamorous. They
Mm.
idolize it, even some of them. And with all the movies and everything, how it's portrayed. But this was a probably one of the biggest lessons in my life was learning how to become me, not Rita Gigante so much, just evolving into the soul that I am today,
Mm.
regardless of who my father was, how my family, was connected to that. It was just a way for me to understand and move through the process. And that goes, I feel like that goes to anybody who's in, because we all go through shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's can you accept, you know, the challenge, so to speak, because
Mm-hmm.
you came here to learn, right? If we came here and we didn't have lessons, we'd be bored, pretty
Right.
much,
Right.
right? So um, I took the challenge and I said I got to rise above this and I got to be able to help others. So
Mm.
my hope is that when people read the book, they'll see so many aspects of the life, not just the fact that he was who he was, but
Mm-hmm.
who I am, how I became who I am, and how I was able to move through that process.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so important for people to um, forgive themselves, forgive others, unconditional love, compassion, acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I look around in the world today and I'm like, wow, we're still not able to be in acceptance of, people that we think or others may think that are, quote unquote different. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
I mean, we're all one and the same. We just express ourselves differently, but
Yeah.
people, they're still in that place. And it's, I pray every day and I put out the energy every day that we make strides to make those changes because that's what we're in need of here.
I
So,
fully agree. The majority of people have more in common than they think they do.
Exactly.
They really do. I mean, everybody has to make a living. Everybody wants to live in a, obviously with there are exceptions. Don't get me wrong. Everybody
Sure.
wants to live a prosperous life. Everybody wants to worry and give their children the best life that they can. Everybody's got to pay taxes, right? Everybody's got to go to work every day.
Right.
And there's more. We have more in common than we
Right.
do not in common. And the truth of the matter is, I don't care. And you probably will agree with me. I don't care what background you are either, because
No.
I mean, if you come from a family like us, where you're Italian and you have a close knit family and you're raised Roman Catholic, if you truly think about it, it's really not that much different if somebody is from the Middle East, has a close knit family,
Right.
and is raised in a Muslim faith, right?
Exactly.
The food might be different, the color of your skin might be different, but the
Right.
truth of the matter, the values are the same.
Exactly.
They really are.
Absolutely. Our biggest wars are about religion, and I don't get it. If you could just stick to the concept of love, all of that we could just sweep under the table,
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with praying and going to church and all kinds of stuff. I absolutely, if that's what makes you feel good, fantastic. But people just need to be allowed to be what they need to be, who they need to be, without anybody saying to them, "Oh, that's that's crap. That's horrible. That's this. It's that." It's. I've seen too much of it, more now than ever.
Yeah.
Growing up when we were kids, you didn't experience. You left your doors open.
Yeah, it was different, and I mean, I could go on and on and on, but when we were growing up, you had close knit communities. You don't have close knit communities anymore. When we were growing up, the men in the community protected the community. Sometimes a little bit too much.
Right.
But you don't have any of that at all anymore. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I specifically remember my mother having a problem with another woman on my front stoop when I lived in Brooklyn, and the people to my neighbor 2 doors down and my neighbor from down the block came to separate it and stop it. Nobody called the cops. They just stopped it and separated it. Today, people close the doors and they go inside, and that's it. And I don't think that's how humans are supposed to operate. I think humans are supposed to operate in community, since they have been since the dawn of time.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Not separated, brought together.
Right.
So that's what I'm hoping the book does for, anybody who reads it.
Yeah.
Find your truth and then get your light out there into the world.
And also, what's different about this type of book, I'm sure, one of the Gaudis have wrote books. I'm sure one of the Persicos have wrote books that were daughters or wives of famous mafiosa. But the biggest difference between you and them is they had glitz and glamour. They had money and cars, and people were afraid of who they were. Whereas in your family, your father was he tried to be such a hidden character that his family had to take the same role. So there was no Mercedes Benzes. There was no lavish gifts. There was no lavish money spread around. There was nobody saying, watch out for Rita, don't mess with her. Because his whole idea was to keep it hidden and secret, even within his family knew, but they had to abide by the same rules.
Sure.
Right. But where other quote unquote mafia princesses, which you weren't, had the money and were going out at night and had the Mercedes Benzes and had the fancy bags, and they were and were very dramatic and got away with a lot of crap that no regular girl wouldn't get away with, going into a club for free when she's 19 and not supposed to drink and things like that. That was not your life, which is what a lot of people.
it was never any of our lives in this family because we were raised very differently.
Mhm.
We weren't raised, in that way. We weren't, and have I gone out dancing? Of course, but it wasn't. I don't think that between me, my mother, and my sisters, we're not even jewelry people. Like we don't
Mhm.
have that. We have jewelry, but it's interesting. My mother found an awesome ring that she loved from Macy's. It was probably about $100, if that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she bought it and she wore it, and because of my father, everybody just assumed it was real. There's a lot of assumptions that go on, in my, people just assume I have a lot of money because of, my last name. They don't realize that I'm just like everybody else,
Yeah.
doing my business, making my money, and it's sad because again, that's like me assuming, you know, oh, he's probably poor because he's got blah, blah, blah,
Right,
like
right, right.
even if I looked at somebody on the street and they were sitting there with a cup in their hand and they wanted money, I'd still see them as a human being.
Mm.
And I don't know their circumstances. So I'm not in a position to judge it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know what
Yeah.
lesson they're learning here.
Yeah.
They may chose to come here and do that to teach somebody else compassion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that free will is a blessing and a curse, and I think it's a test because a lot of your instincts have to be controlled, and if you don't control them, then things could really get out of hand. I think that, and one of those instincts is you. There are people that believe that they're better than other people,
Right.
And compassion can only go as far as maybe your family. That being said, there are people that have, there's sincere compassion for others. There are people that have to learn it, like people like you and myself that had to those virtues had to be learned. And then there are people that fake it, right? And you could see it from a block away. It's like, oh yeah, God, it's just full of crap. And I think all that is a test. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think that, when we're confronted with people like that, we have to see them as the soul, not the ego, because the ego is what creates that piece of them that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, they may have grown up, in a family that, that was very hard for them and they never got past it, right? Again, though, it's not for me to judge. They're here doing whatever it is they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And not remembering it because we don't remember when we come our agenda, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everything that we're talking about ends up being an opportunity.
Yes, you could definitely. Yes, yeah, you could definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I've had people say to me, "Why do you give to, people that are, on the street holding a cup for money?" And I said, that's my business. Like I don't and it's because I don't know his life or her life.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's my intention, in other words, if my intention is pure, then that's all that has to be.
Right. Right.
Right.
What does it matter if that person made wrong choices, or if that person was had a bad time, or if that person is just a terrible human being? Your gesture is pure.
That's it.
And
that gives that person an opportunity somehow as well, right? Or maybe somebody watching it right next to me sees that and maybe somehow gets, oh, maybe I'd like to, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, we're all here. At one point, you're the student, and at one point, you're the teacher in all things.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned on this earth. So
Mhm.
you're always learning and teaching somehow. But the biggest thing is how can we pull together again as a, you know, as a soul group, because that's what I feel like we're souls here. You know, we live in these bodies, but they're lent to us.
Mhm.
So how do we gather the souls together to live harmoniously instead of, you know, pulling each other apart?
It is. I don't know if we're ever going to be. I'll be totally frank. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do that again.
I don't know if it's in this lifetime, but I feel
Oh,
like
okay.
we're,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. It could be, because we don't know 10 years from now. It could be completely different 10 years from now,
That's
right?
true.
So if it's not in this lifetime, it will be at some point, because
Mhm.
that's the natural evolution of the soul and the
Mhm.
spirit, you
Mhm.
know, to evolve in that way.
Mhm.
How long it takes is up to us. How many times have we extincted ourselves, if that's a word?
Right.
You
Right. Right.
know, we've completely and had to kind of reboot and start over. We've come a long way, and the reason why I feel like it's sometimes things have to get worse before they get better, and I feel like things are, you know, feeling like they're worse because people are fighting the energy of change. You
Yeah.
know, they're just fighting it. So when you have that push pull, it's going to feel so much worse than it
Yeah.
needs to,
Yeah.
right? But if people could surrender to the good that we can have, it would go so much smoother. But again, all lessons, all, you
Yeah.
know, figuring out.
It's a very difficult transition because there are people that truly believe that particular agenda is for the greater good, and they don't have a lot of worldly experience. Maybe they're very young. Maybe they're the loudest on social media, and in the long run, it's not, and they just can't
Right,
see it. They just,
right.
and it's a difficult time. It really is. But I want to change courses 1 second and
Sure.
get back to your book. Um, when I read your book, when you first told me you were a psychic medium healer, and I didn't read your book, I didn't understand why. Once I read your book, I understood. And you went through some serious dramatic. You went through some serious dramatic events in your book, and again, a lot of women and a lot of daughters that are in your position would, for lack of a better term, get drunk on the power, if you will.
Mm.
And you didn't, and you weren't able to. And there was one, and I remember texting you when I read that part of the book, and there was one part of the book where, well, let me rewind a little bit. Everybody knows the story about when John Gotti Sr. had one of his sons had gotten accidentally killed, and then his that person went missing in the next year or 2 years after that. There was an incident that happened with you with a crossing guard, and you ran home and told your mom, and then later on it was explained, don't say anything because that man will disappear.
Right. Not in those words, but yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much, like, you know, I don't want your dad to do anything to the man, you know, hurt him in any way, because, you know, I understood but didn't understand what that meant, you know, to the degree, like, yes, any dad would get upset and want to, like, beat the crap out of somebody, that whatever, but this was completely different.
Yeah, this would have been much, much worse.
Right.
This would have been much worse. This would have been possibly torture and at the end, death.
Right.
If your dad knew what had, long story short, I'm not going to get into detail, but a crossing guard had harmed you when you were in grade school.
Right.
And you ran home and told your mother, and your mother was afraid that your father would have reacted in the typical Cosa Nostra way.
Of course.
and you were sworn to secrecy. Don't tell anybody.
Right.
Explain how that affected you, because I have a feeling that things like that happened in your life drove you to be this healer, psychic medium, and be
Sure.
this compassionate person that you are. Because it could go in one of two ways. You could also become a very bitter person from that.
Oh God, I know. I
And you
don't think I
didn't.
didn't experience rage and, all those emotions because
Mhm.
as a human, we do that. It's just that I was determined to work through them
Mhm.
and not hold on to them because they would physically make me ill if I did. So, because I'm an empath and I feel everything, so
Mhm.
anything that remains in my body ultimately affects me physically.
Mhm.
Okay. Even people's energies, if I let them, you know, if I let them, my mother's energy, my father's, if I let them in my body and I just let it stay, it's going to affect me.
Okay.
Sometimes my anxiety wouldn't even be mine, you
Mhm.
know? So part of that particular incident was twofold. One was this was a man, again, who thought he could have power over me.
Mhm.
And that was my father, right? Over every aspect of my life, not just, yes, you're young and your family until you're a certain age, they want to protect you and all that. So I get that aspect of it. But to be violated in that way was another aspect.
Mhm.
And even another aspect was nobody heard my voice when I said it. It's like
Mhm.
my mother heard it, but said, well, this isn't really about you. This is about your father.
Mhm.
When was it about the child and not about him and her and that fucking life, right?
Right. Okay.
So
Yes.
so there was really many aspects to that
Mhm.
I didn't know then, but then writing the book and exploring it, okay, now I understand why. So there was a whole, you know, it storyline of that book that wants to keep women, suppressed,
Mhm.
and wants it to be, they want it kind of the way it always was. You get married, you have kids, you take care of your mother, and that's it. That's your life,
Mhm.
you know. And I knew at a very young age that was never going to happen for me.
That's not for you. Yeah.
Yeah, that just wasn't. So, do I like the married life? I love my wife. And I have a son with her, and it's fantastic. And he's having a baby now, so
So
it's
that's
amazing.
that's interesting. So again, for people who don't know, you are gay, and
Yes,
you knew very young. Yeah, well, you
very.
didn't. Yeah, you didn't know, but you when you realized it, looking back, you go, "Oh, okay, that's yeah, okay."
Oh, I can tell you, I was 11 when I knew.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was a knowing.
It wasn't like confusion. It was like, oh,
No
okay.
confusion. I knew exactly, but I knew instinctively I could not say a word to anybody
Yeah, okay,
because of the religious piece,
okay.
because of my father, and I didn't even know at that point who he was and what he did,
Hmm.
but I was just petrified.
Right, right.
And and again, it was swallowing, constantly having to swallow my truth, constantly
Mhm.
having to, not being heard, not being seen, you know. You
Okay,
stay here, you don't ask questions,
right.
we won't have any problems, kind of.
Okay, yeah. So this
Yeah.
this all just out of curiosity, was your son adopted, or he was your wife carried,
He's
or
from he's from my wife's first marriage.
oh, okay, so you
But
have adopted son.
yeah, so he's always been my son because we are like two peas in a pod. So I
Oh,
never
okay.
I never say he's my stepson because it just doesn't feel that way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. Yeah,
But yeah, he was interestingly enough, he was probably around that age when I came into their lives. It's
about
probably around
11.
12. Yeah, 11, 12. Yeah.
Okay, so he basically he grew up
Yeah,
with you. Yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Calls me for advice, the whole thing.
That's
So
good. That's
nice.
great.
It's nice.
Yeah, when people ask you questions and ask you advice, it it's like people think it's a bother, but the truth of the matter is it makes you feel good. It makes you want to help that person.
Oh, I'm ecstatic every time I do a reading
Yeah.
because
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not just doing a psychic reading. I think people need to understand that yes, I'm getting psychic messages. Yes, I'm talking to their loved ones, but I'm also really entrenched in counseling because of all that I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So I've really dealt with, children right up to people into their 90s
Mm-hmm.
and helping them cross over, so it's, to me, you can't even put a price on it. There's no amount of money to what it makes you feel like when you've helped another soul.
Okay.
And that could be, listen to me, that could be not just what I do. I don't care if you're in the supermarket and you did a pay it forward and you paid for the groceries behind you. You know what I mean?
Right.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
Anything makes you feel good.
No, it truly does. Like when I have this podcast and somebody asks me, oh, can you get in touch with this person? I'd love to have them on mine. And then I play the middle person. I go, hey, that it does make you feel good. It really does. And what's funny is that the person, because I know from my experience, it's sad. It feels difficult when you ask, because you feel like, oh, I'm putting this person in a strange position. But the truth of the matter is the person, generally speaking, likes to help out.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Now, this book definitely shows how it shaped you. There's a lot of information about what your father is like and what your family is like and your mom is like, but it definitely shaped you. Toward the end of the book, you described what you would call, I don't know, a vision, or why don't you get into that a little bit so people know this is not your typical book. It's a lot different. As a matter of fact, this is more spiritual. It's the Godfather's daughter. It's named the Godfather's daughter, but it's really a spiritual read.
Well, if you read the subtitle, it's an unlikely story of love, healing, and redemption.
Okay,
that's really what the book is. Okay. But nobody would probably buy it if
if you're right.
Just that name.
Yeah.
So we had to use something, and that's fine. I have no problem with that because it's the truth. I had many visions as I moved on with my work. I've had visions of Christ. I've had visions of the Blessed Mother. I've seen my father. We've talked on many occasions when he passed, and still do. And now, honestly, everybody from both sides, all the uncles and aunts are there now. Nobody's here. Like that whole generation is gone, So when they come to me, they come because they want to help. If there's somebody sitting with me that they need to help me with, they will. And that to me is the best gift I could get from them at this point. Okay. So is there a particular vision that you wanted me to address?
I think it was the one about when you saw, I believe it was Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was the first time you described it in the book as the first time, and how dramatic it was.
Oh my God. It was unbelievably dramatic because he was huge. I was in a church and I was doing, my girlfriend at the time took me to what we would call the laying on of the hands. First time I experienced it. And, these are people who speak in tongues. Some of them speak, some of them understand it and don't speak. It's a course that you go through. And then at the end, you're blessed. They take you into the church. The priest lays his hands on you. He says, some prayers. And a lot of times people get what's called slain in the spirit, right? I had no idea what to expect. But before that even happened, me and only 6 other people witnessed Christ in a window that was I would say from his, from here up, like from the bust area up. And I saw him. It's interesting. I don't know how anybody else saw him. I saw him the way I was raised to see him, right? He came to me in that way. Somebody might have seen him completely different. I didn't even ask because I was in awe, and I stayed there. Like an hour later, when everybody was gone, I walked outside and then I walked back in and I sat down and he was still there. Like I still saw him, and I knew the energy that was coming off that. It was a window, the energy that was coming off that window was incredible. And I knew in that moment my life was changed. I says, okay, I don't know what this means, but I know it means something. And from that moment on, I started to see visions. I started to see things and not know what to make. I had to be trained. I was only 24 at that time.
Mm.
So I knew I was an empath, so I would feel things, right? I knew I went to massage school at that point too. I knew I could put my hands on somebody and know what was going on in the body,
Mhm.
right? And the other piece of me that was developed well at that point was the claircognizant, which was meant I knew things that I didn't know how I knew.
Mhm.
Okay, so I was still didn't fully grasp the clairaudient, which was I could hear, in the clairvoyant where I could see,
Mhm.
but it was coming slowly but surely coming. And after that day, I was not the same.
Mhm.
I was just not the same.
You were 24 now, so this was some time ago. I mean, you were 24 then, so this was some time ago. Have you figured out why he appeared to you? Because I'm assuming he obviously doesn't appear to everybody. There's a select few. Why you?
Okay, so I think let me back up a second. I really feel like he would appear to anyone who is searching for him. Because of my background and the way I was raised, I kept saying to him, I believe in you. I want to connect with you and I want to speak with you, but not in a religious way. I don't want it to be because of religion. I want to be your friend. Like I want to be someone who could just sit and talk.
Mhm.
And it was very much appreciated by the spirit world that I was seeking that rather than the religious piece of it, because of what could come with that piece, right? And I wasn't comfortable with what came with that. There was a lot of fear connected to it. I had enough fucking fear in my family. Like I didn't
Right.
want more fear, right?
Right.
So I would pray, but pray in that way, speaking just like we're speaking.
Okay.
You know, show me how to surrender. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to know how I can help others. Show me how I can help others.
Okay.
And I think that I was ready in that moment. You know how they say when the student's ready, that the teacher appears.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was ready. He came. That was the beginning of the full-on training after that.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Let's do a little experiment, if you will.
sure.
I'm going to give you what I believe is an attribute in my characteristics that I think is probably the best attribute, but sometimes it's flawed, and then sometimes I don't know why I'm good at this. Maybe you could help me understand. Believe me, I've been in therapy a long time.
You and me both.
Yeah. I can judge human nature very, very well. Very, very, very well. I could ask a couple of questions, maybe a conversation, and I know the type of person. And even if they explain to me, if they're not being sincere, I could tell. If they're being sincere, I could tell. They could tell me about their relationship, and I could tell if it's doomed, or I could tell if it's going to prosper.
Right.
Or I could, sometimes it's like, it's not that easy. It's 50-50,
Right.
Sometimes sometimes it's a particular point of life that might affect that person. So I can't fully tell, but there are times where somebody describes something to me or I speak to that person and I could tell if this person is sincere, if the person is phony, if the person is going through hard times, if they're full of shit, I could tell quickly. So like, for example, this happened on Friday, and my drawback is sometimes I don't hold back when I tell this person, and I go, and then it takes me a second to go, I'm hurting this person. This person is I'm not helping right now. Right. I'm telling him something he doesn't want to hear, and he doesn't realize that he's going to be in a world of shit. And me telling him now is not helping because he doesn't even see it coming.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. This guy at work, we were talking, and we're always busting balls at work because we're blue collar guys. We're all knockaround guys. So what I was able to do was transition my seriousness into being busting balls, because I'm like, this guy is, he was like, his face was like a ghost when I told him. So, like he was embarrassed a little bit, and I kind of felt bad, but whatever. He's a very quiet guy, not a good looking guy. And so you'll probably pick this up quick. He told me that he met his wife 4 years ago. They have gotten married. They've had 2 kids and bought a house. He's 36. She's 38. She has never been married or engaged before. And they met when they were 34, when she was 34 and he was 32. And I looked at him and I said, you don't even realize you have a problem, do you? And that's when he was like, and I said, dude, that is not going to work. And then I was like, that's when I was like, let me pivot here, because I just made this guy's heart drop to his stomach and he doesn't even realize why. Right. Let me pivot here. Because he's a very quiet guy. He's not a good looking guy. He's not a charming guy. So clearly in that 4-year period, when he met his wife when she was 34 and they got married, had 2 kids, bought a house, and now she's a stay-at-home mom and he's working, clearly he was being manipulated. She had an agenda. Clear as, to me, it's clear as day that she had an agenda, and she picked somebody she could easily manipulate because she wanted that life, and the bad choices she made previously before she was 34 years old didn't give her that. So she targeted somebody who was easily manipulated, and that was soft and was naive and took advantage. Now, when he explained that to me, and I said to him, you have a problem, you don't even realize it. I felt bad when I said that, because that's what I mean by being direct. And this is not the first time this has happened. A friend of mine said to me one time, my wife is in Italy. I said, what's she doing in Italy? She said, well, she needs to get away, and she needs to find herself. So she decided that she was going to go on a trip alone. And I'm home. He had 2 28-year-old girls, and I just came out and said it, and I should have never said it because I felt so bad. It just came flying out. I said, bro, she's effing somebody else. And if I talk to somebody that is as intuitive as me, they understand. They get. They go, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, yeah. And there are only a handful of people that I'm friends with that are like, most people go, why? How? Why would you think that? What would, maybe she did need some time away. Why did she, so blah, 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 blah. We've known each other pretty good so far. Why do you think some people like myself are good at that, and majority of people just can't get it?
So I think that you have an inherent gift, that knowing, like that claircognizant, you just know, you don't even know how you know. The other piece of blurting it out is just a matter of, stopping and taking a breath and saying, let me see how to approach this. That would make it even more open to them than just blurting it, But I think that's what it is. I think you have that gift of just knowing. That's why people send me pictures when I'm going to do a reading, because when I look at the picture, I can read the energy. And that's how I work, So if I'm going to see them, then I don't need their picture necessarily. But if they're going to ask about anybody, they have to send me a picture, because I read the energy. My dad was the same way. He could shake your hand and know exactly who you were. You didn't have to say anything. You didn't have to answer a lot of questions. You didn't have to really do anything. He just knew. And there are some of us that are that way. We can. And then there are others that, are not in touch with that piece of them. They're just, that's not their strong suit, we'll say.
Yeah.
So they become, I can, there's an energy about people who are like your friend who was taken advantage of, and, a doormat, we'll say. I could pick out that energy in a room full of 1,000 people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when I say it to them, you have to say it in a way that they would be able to receive it gently, as opposed to abrasively. Because now, here's the flip side of that, John. Maybe he needed the shock. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe that's what he needed to wake the fuck up, right? Like,
Right.
we don't know. But you could, if it happens again, you can just simply say, I'm so sorry it came out that way. It's truly what I felt, but I probably could have said it in a way that, you could have received it different. Something along those lines where.
Do you know how many times I've actually said that? Because I'm like, fuck, I did it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, your heart is just wanting to help the person. I get it. Like, it's like, and I know a lot of people that don't have what you would call a filter. They just come out with it, right? My wife, sometimes that could happen to her. But sometimes it might be the necessary evil as opposed to dancing around something. Because some people may just never get it by you dancing.
Right.
You know? I've worked with people because sometimes they come to me just for counseling. So if I've danced around something in a way that I was hoping what they were, and Spirit just said, okay, now just say it. Like, just be direct. Enough. They need to hear it.
Okay.
So that'll happen to me if I'm doing a reading too. I'll say, like, I'll be like, listen, I don't want to, and in the back of my head, I hear them. Just say it. They need to hear it. Okay. But again, that's what I say. They're telling me, this is what you need to hear, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I don't think it's necessarily always wrong. I think every instance is different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'm sorry.
No, you do have the gift. That's what that is.
And what do you mean by gift? I mean, I just basically say I could read human nature a lot better than others.
It's the gift of knowing. It's the gift of being able to read another energy. Okay. It's called claircognizant. You just know. You don't know how you know, but you know.
Yeah. But, like yourself, like, it was always like steps. Like, if I was 25, I couldn't pick it up.
Right.
When I was 35, I got better. And now I'm 46 and it's a hell of a lot better. And I'll have people come at me and go, no, that's just not how it goes. That's no. And I go, oh, all right. At the same time, if somebody does point something out that makes sense, I'll just be like, oh, okay. My wife hates watching a movie with me. Hates it because I could pinpoint the drawback. We did it last night. We watched this movie with John Malkovich, Martin Lawrence, and I forgot the other actor. And it was about a serial killer. And the lead detective is a woman. John Malkovich plays a serial killer who's locked up in prison, and the lead detective needs help. Needs help with finding another serial killer. So she goes to John Malkovich. And I said to my wife, this is Silence of the Lambs, only a shitty version of it. Right. And then she enters the first time to go into the building to meet him. And I said, if she walks down a long hallway, sure as shit, she's walking down a long hallway. Because that's that famous scene where Jodie Foster's walking down that long hallway. Of course. And I'm like, son of a I'm like, gee, why can't they just? And my wife is like, I can't watch a movie with you. And I'm like, because I can't understand how they don't think that we can't figure it out. But the truth of the matter is, most people can't. Like I can. I go. This is a cheap version. You didn't even do your homework. This is horrible.
Right. So it takes a lot to pique your interest because Yeah. You can feel that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get that.
Yeah. And then here's the funny part, Rita. Then there are movies that I watch and it hits me like a ton of bricks. And I got to stop myself from tearing up. and it's usually related to like your life. You're like, okay, like if I watch Justin Hoffman just made a movie where he's a dying father who had an argument with his son, and he's dying to see his son before he dies. I had to I had to stop. I'm going to be a blubbering idiot if I continue to watch this movie because
right.
It's funny. Now, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we're going to get to the book.
Yeah.
Because women are usually more emotionally available, do they make better medium psychics, healers?
I wouldn't say they make better. I would say that if someone can connect to their feminine and masculine energy, that makes probably the best case scenario. Also, if you have to be able not to judge another, so you can't. We are emotionally available, but here's the other piece. Sometimes it can be too much. And then it gets in the way if we're not careful. Like I constantly have to put up boundaries because I'm an empath, I'll get drawn into the energy if I'm not careful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So does it help them? Sure, because I'm giving them my energy, but it's not helping me. Okay. So I don't think it's necessarily the male or the female is any better than the other. I think there's many men out there that are excellent readers.
But would you say that more women are in your line of work than men?
I just say, yeah, I was just going to say that. I have seen, and I was trained by one man and the rest were women. And he was phenomenal.
Right.
But he understood his feminine side, and he had equal both parts. And, it makes it easier when you can connect to those two. I had to learn to connect to my feminine side. It took me a long time, and my wife was a great asset for me because she is the epitome of like a goddess energy, And
now, when you say feminine side, is it somebody who's just emotionally aware and emotionally available?
Yes.
Okay. Because a lot of times you say your feminine side, and there are men that are straight and just have more feminine traits.
Yeah, but they are in touch with that, and they're okay with it, and others are not.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Others will go in the complete opposite direction because they're afraid of what it means.
Yeah. Right. Because I don't have feminine traits, but I believe that I'm more emotionally available and aware than most men.
Absolutely.
So that's why I had to differentiate, because I've met plenty of guys that are straight and have kids, and I go, is he straight? And the same thing with women.
Yeah.
Right? There are more women that have more masculine traits.
Sure.
And you go, really? She's married and she has kids and she loves her husband. Wow. That's, she could be,
Absolutely.
But that's not the type of person you're describing. You're describing somebody who's just basically more in tune with their emotions and in tune with other people's emotions.
Yes, because we are all that. We are definitely part masculine, part feminine energy.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, in the spirit world, they're androgynous. They don't distinguish necessarily masculine and feminine. You know what I mean?
And this is a great conversation. I hope people understand, appreciate it like we do, because I also believe that people are not pure good or pure evil. I think they're a mixture of both. I think some people are more evil and some people are more good, but I don't think there is one person that you go, that person's purely evil or that person's purely good. I think it's a combination of both for everybody.
Sure.
So how does that go into the spirit world?
I think
roll over into the spirit world?
I think again, it's what they came here trying to learn. Somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, that's someone who's, mentally ill.
Right.
So again, can't judge it because we don't know if he came needing to experience that, or if he came was completely traumatized, or a combination of both, and that's why he ended up being the way he was.
Right. Yeah, that's an extreme, right? So another extreme example would be like who was the guy from Apple?
Oh,
Uh
yeah. See, this is what happens when you.
yeah, I forgot the guy's name from Apple. It wasn't Gates. Was it Bill Gates? No, I forgot
No,
his name.
I
Steve
can't think of
Jobs.
his
Steve
name.
Jobs.
Yeah,
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. There you go.
Steve Jobs had a daughter out of wedlock, and he wanted nothing to do with her
Right.
because it would get in the way of his business because he had such a
Right.
ton of vision. But at the same time, he built this tremendous advancement in this technologically corporation is huge that changed the world, right?
Mhm.
But he was a terrible dad, which is kind of like what I mean. But in a normal person could be like, could give some money to the poor, which is a wonderful trait. But at the same time, could doesn't hold the door open for the person behind them because they just don't have any. It just I'm in a rush, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a normal combination of
Yes.
good and bad, right? And
Sure.
I think most people are like that. And
Yes.
I think
Absolutely.
it's difficult for people to admit that. Majority of people want to believe that they're just good people, right?
I think inherently we probably are, but shit happens.
You really
And
think so? You think inherently we're good? I think inherently
I
we're
do.
bad.
We all come from the spirit world. I do. I really feel like we come from love.
Yeah.
We just forget,
Because I believe that if we don't have guidance and regulations and and borders, things get out of hand quick.
100%. And that's because of the world we live in. We've chosen the earth world to learn from. But there are other dimensions and other worlds like Earth that don't have any of that. They live peacefully, harmoniously.
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand what you're saying. Okay.
So that, just we're learning here. This is a huge school. So yes, we need some kind of guidance.
Mm-hmm.
In order to, yes, we don't just go killing people just because we feel like killing people, or,
Right. But we used to.
Up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But we, before modern society, if some,
Sure.
the whole reason you had community was to survive because somebody else would come and just take over.
Protecting yourself and protecting your community was absolutely what needed to happen. If someone was trying, we don't just lie down and go, yeah, kill all of us, right?
Yeah, right. And it was done intentionally because of, evil. Genghis Khan took over the known world because he just wanted to, and he had that manipulative, type A personality, and he just went and destroyed, every other civilization you could possibly find, raped, pillaged, and burned. And the Vikings did the same thing. And you go on and on and on. And this is something that continues, which is why you have communities. I'm going to ask you one more question. This is also a good one because it goes into that. When we were young and grew up in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, I know you moved to Jersey when you were very young, but your family was from Greenwich Village. If somebody different came into the neighborhood and wasn't welcome, the men would immediately
escort them out.
Some people say that was racism.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably partially to
absolutely
that. But I think that the majority of it is basically just protecting your community.
It's both. And people
and here's where people will call me crazy, but I go, but I had a Puerto Rican friend that grew up with me in Bensonhurst, and everybody accepted him because he grew up in Bensonhurst.
Right.
It was the other Hispanics that would come in that were like, so you go, well, was it racism? Because his name was Don, because you accepted Don.
Right.
But I think it was like, you know what I mean? So I think it's like, and if you went into the black neighborhoods back in the 70s and 80s, oof, you better.
Same thing.
It was the same thing. So
same thing.
I think it's more of protecting and then racism second.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
But also it's fear-based driven, right? It's
yes.
This person's gonna potentially hurt me or my family. So it's fear, and we're right away. your hair stands up and you're like, oh no, this isn't. Now my father had to, because of what he was running.
Yeah.
He had to protect everyone that he felt needed to be protected. So, but he was a very fair man. So, people think, oh, well, he only dealt with Italians. No, he was in business with a Jewish man. He was in business with, like it just wasn't Italians. But
it's human nature
so,
it's human nature to be comfortable around your own.
Yeah. Yes, it absolutely
it really is. Yeah.
But it's funny because growing up in this family, I never had a clique of any sort connected to me. It was everybody. Like I was friends with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I couldn't tell him I was.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
One of my dearest friends was Cuban.
Yeah. Okay.
One of my dearest friends was involved in the Gotti organization.
Right.
But he was my, my dear friend, and I wasn't gonna, not see him or not connect to him. So
I became friends with people with different backgrounds once I left that neighborhood. That was it. Now I have plenty of Spanish, Black, friends, Arabic, but because during that in the 80s, it was the whole neighborhood was town. Once I moved, then that's when
Yeah, of course. Then you begin to learn other cultures, which is really a nice thing.
Absolutely. You appreciate other cultures, understand different people in different ways, and so on and so forth. And that's when you realize, right, going back to the beginning point, that we have more in common than we not do. It's the God's honest truth. So here it is, The Godfather's Daughter. Where could people find this book?
Well, it's going to be released on Amazon like within the next week or so.
Okay.
So they can get it on Amazon. They can go to my website, ritagigante.net, and they can pre-order it. If they want a signed copy, they can order it. I'll get the information. I will make sure I sign it and send it to them. And everybody can reach me by my email or even my phone number. Like people know where I am.
Right.
So my email is ritagigantepsychic.com.
Okay.
And the website tells you everything.
Okay.
Yeah,
which is how I got in touch with you originally.
Yeah.
I am going to make sure that your email and your website is in the description area so everybody could see it. And it is The Godfather's Daughter, an unlikely story of love, healing, and redemption. I'm telling you, a fascinating read. I'm not much of a reader, and I read this thing. I couldn't put it down. And that is the God-given truth. I hate reading. And this was the first book in a long time that I read cover to cover. So go out and give it a shot. You will not be disappointed. I promise you.
John, I sincerely love always coming on your show and just discussing great topics, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. I appreciate everything. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Okay, love. We'll talk soon.
All right, Rita. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.